Hey howdy hey, how is everybody doing, and welcome back to Disney Daily. Today I thought I would do a follow-up to my video, How Souls Connect All Pixar Films. Now for those of you who don't know, I made that video before Soul had actually been released, and I wanted to see if my theory would hold up after Soul came out. For the most part, I think my theory still holds up pretty well, but there are some minor tweaks I want to make. Additionally, I wanted to further illustrate how Soul really does connect all of the Pixar films with the addition of new evidence. First, there is the Hall of Everything, which is the biggest indicator that all of the Pixar films are connected and exist in the same universe. It is in this hall that we see several objects and places that are from previous Pixar films. For example, in the air, we can see the blimp from Up, and on the floor to the left, we see the Pizza Planet truck. In the same frame, we also see the Axiom in the movie WALL-E floating in the distance. I truly believe that these objects were put in this movie to illustrate just how connected all these movies really are. Now, the next point I want to draw your attention to is the dialogue that happens between one of the Jerrys and Terry. Jerry specifically says to Terry in regards to the soul count, quote, "The soul count hasn't been off in centuries," end quote. To me, these souls that haven't been counted could be the ones I mentioned from Brave. Given the timeline, we know the events in Brave occurred in medieval Scotland, which would have been centuries before the events in Soul took place. Brave could very well be the century Jerry is referring to in regards to the count being off. Now, I did say in my video that I thought these were lost souls, and I now retract that theory after seeing how Soul defines lost souls. Now, although they aren't lost, I do think these are some sort of soul that are stuck in an in-between dimension, not living but not dead either. Now, speaking of timelines, where does Soul fit in the Pixar timeline? Well, like I said in my previous video, the times when we see the Great Beyond and the Great Before, those are going on simultaneously with all of the Pixar films because souls are constantly being made and sent down to Earth, as well as souls passing on. So in order to bring various Pixar characters to life, souls are constantly being made. However, let me also say that the times we see Joe as a human being on Earth, that I believe is taking place in the 2000s simply based on his cell phone and also the look of New York City. Now, another claim I made in my last video was that Pixar deals with dimensions, and after watching Soul, I can confidently say that there are several dimensions in the Pixar universe, whether it was the Great Before or the Great Beyond, or even that weird in-between we see Joe falling through in the beginning of the film. Pixar has definitely opened the doors to dimensions being possible in its universe. Now, one of the biggest questions I got after my theory video was how do I explain the Great Beyond and the Land of the Dead in Coco? And to explain this, I have come up with two possible answers. On one hand, perhaps it could be a cultural difference on how they may interpret the afterlife. For instance, in Mexico, their Great Beyond is the Land of the Dead, which is a unique aspect to Mexican heritage. However, others like Joe, who are American, may interpret the afterlife to be more like the Great Beyond, just a giant escalator with a big white light at the end. However, I would also like to point out that we don't get to see what is beyond the white light. So perhaps the Great Beyond is at first a giant escalator for souls, but once they go past the white light, it is up for interpretation. So basically, every individual may interpret what is beyond the bright light in their own way. Now, on the other hand, here is my second theory, that perhaps the final death, which we see happen to Chicharron, is when the soul finally goes to the Great Beyond. So the final death and the Great Beyond are essentially the same thing, but again, the interpretation might be different based on the culture. Now, another big question I got after my video was, doesn't Inside Out and Soul contradict each other? And on the surface, it does seem that way. But if we dig a little deeper, it actually fits together quite nicely. You see, in Soul, we are told that souls get their personalities in the Great Before, whereas Inside Out, we are under the impression that personalities are created once on Earth. I think both are right and can coincide. You see, the new unborn souls in the Great Before start off with a baseline personality, and then once they are sent down to Earth, the personality can change and adapt based on their experiences once on Earth. And let me just say, this is extremely brilliant because Pixar has found a way to weave in the nurture versus nature argument within its movies. Now, in my previous video, I also claimed that souls could inhabit more than just humans. And after watching the movie, I still think this is valid and reasonable because we clearly see that Joe is able to enter into a cat's body. In my video, I said that maybe souls are intended to just enter the bodies of humans, but they may in fact miss their target and inhabit another creature or object. So this also leads me to believe that this is how various Pixar characters come to life. For instance, Woody, Mater, and Wall-E, I believe and still still do, that it is because they have a soul. Now, let me just say, this is where I may differ from John Negroni's proposal that objects can get their life source from human beings' energy. Basically, a human being loves an object, and that is what fuels that object to come to life. I believe, at least for now, that it is a soul that fuels these different objects, not a human being's energy. Now, let me reiterate, I am in no way stating what I am saying is fact or true. This is just my interpretation and theories for how everything may fit together. Well, that concludes this episode of Disney Daily. I would love to hear from you guys, so if you have your own theory or proposal to explain everything, please leave that down in the comments. As always, thanks for being my guest here at Disney Daily. Until next time.